I remember Eden before the serpent came, and before the shadow's first whisper. From above, it was a place without any scar, a garden so perfect it seemed to breathe in rhythm with the heart of God. Its rivers flowed like liquid light, bending around hills and forests with laughter in their sound. The air itself seemed alive, carrying the faint scent of blossoms that would never wither. In those days, the ground never knew thorns, the wind never carried storm, and the sky was never dimmed by smoke or sorrow. Adam and Eve walked in that beauty like royalty, not in pride, but in harmony. They bore a glory that came not from themselves, but from the Creator's own presence. They were clothed in light, though they did not yet know it. I saw them speak with the animals as one would with trusted friends, and the animals listened. Lions would rest at their feet, and the deer would come without fear. Every leaf seemed to turn toward them, for all creation recognized in them the image of the one who made it. But beyond Eden, past the boundary the Eternal One had set, the land changed. You would not have seen it from the garden's center, but I knew what lay outside, a realm still touched by the chaos that had existed before God shaped this world. Beyond the border of obedience, the ground was colder, the light dimmer. It was there that the shadows moved. And in those shadows, one in particular watched. Lucifer, once the morning star, once the anointed guardian who walked among the stones of fire. Ezekiel 28 verse 14. I remember when his voice led worship in heaven, when the light of God danced on the jewels set into his very being. He had been full of wisdom and beauty, perfect in his ways from the day he was created until pride was found in him. He had wanted the throne. He had wanted the worship. And when it was not given, he chose rebellion. Now he bore no light of his own, only the reflection of what he had stolen and twisted. The joy that once shone in his eyes was replaced with a cold hunger that could not be filled. Since his fall, I had faced him before. I knew his cunning, his patience, and the way he studied his prey. He had already walked the earth in its young days, roaming its unguarded places, Job 1 verse 7, marking what was good and plotting how to turn it to dust. And now his gaze had fixed on the garden, on the man and woman the Creator loved so dearly. Eden's boundary was not like the walls of a city. There was no stone, no gate to break. Its true wall was obedience. As long as Adam and Eve kept their trust in the Word of God, no evil could enter. The serpent could not step inside without a crack in that wall. And that was what Lucifer wanted. Not to break the garden's beauty by force, but to make them open the door themselves. In those early days, I often patrolled the edges of Eden. The Eternal One had set guardians in places you would not imagine, great beings of light stationed where rivers touched the unseen borders, watchful spirits hovering where the winds shifted between worlds. The garden was a fortress of life in a land that had known war. One evening, while the sun dipped low and painted the leaves in gold, I sensed it, a disturbance beyond the eastern edge. It was not a sound, but a pulling in the air, the kind you feel before a storm breaks. A shadow moved just beyond sight, gliding low along the ground, yet not touching it. I knew that presence. Lucifer did not rush. He rarely did. His way was not to strike openly, but to plant seeds in hidden places and wait for them to grow. He had been watching, learning. He had seen how Adam's eyes lit with joy when Eve spoke, how Eve's curiosity often drew her to walk alone among the trees. He knew their strengths, and he knew how to twist them into weaknesses. That night, the stars above Eden shone bright, each one burning in the order set for it by the Creator. But in the dark beyond the garden, I saw other lights, false ones, fallen ones. Angels who had followed Lucifer's rebellion lingered there, their forms dimmed and their voices low. They kept to the shadows, for the boundary burned against their presence. Lucifer moved among them, not as a king surrounded by loyal subjects, but as a predator among jackals. They were tools to him, nothing more. I could not hear every word he spoke, but the air carried pieces, promises of glory, whispers of revenge, and one name repeated with venom: Eve. He had chosen his path. I knew my role: to watch, to guard, and to obey the orders of the Most High. We were not permitted to strike unless commanded. This was not a battle of swords, but of wills. The Eternal One had given humanity the gift and the test of choice. We could not take that from them. Still, I stood ready. My sword was drawn in spirit, its flame hidden but alive. I traced the edges of the garden, every sense sharpened. Somewhere in the darkness, the enemy was shaping his plan, and the first move would soon come. The night grew deep, and the garden slept in peace, but I did not. I knew the peace would not last. It began with a choice that was not his to make, the choice of the serpent. Lucifer, in his cunning, did not approach Eden in his own true form. He knew too well that the sight of what he had become, the scarred brilliance, the empty eyes, the shadowed glory, would reveal him at once. Adam and Eve had never seen corruption, but their spirits would recoil from it if it came too close. No, he would not walk into the garden as himself. He would come wearing another's skin. The serpent in those days was not the crawling creature you know now. He was a wonder among beasts, tall in stature, with scales like polished bronze catching the light of Eden's sun, and eyes that held a strange, almost royal calm. His body rose upright from the ground, his movements smooth and deliberate, almost like the sway of flowing water. Among the animals, he was respected, for his voice was unlike any other creature's. There was a subtle music in it, and he could weave words like silk. Lucifer had been watching him. One evening beyond Eden's edge, under a sky heavy with stars, the serpent wandered close to the boundary. He had no evil in him, not yet. His curiosity simply brought him near. And there, in the quiet, the enemy came. I could not hear every word, but the air trembled with the exchange. Lucifer spoke not with threats, but with admiration. He praised the serpent's beauty, his wisdom among the beasts, his strength and voice. This was his way, to find pride where there was none and plant it like a seed. The serpent did not understand the danger. He only listened. Then came the request, soft, reasonable, wrapped in flattery. Lend me your form, and I will show you wonders beyond this garden. You will be a vessel of higher speech, a messenger of secrets. The serpent hesitated, for every creature felt the unseen heat of Eden's boundary. But Lucifer's words were oil on a cold flame. They made disobedience sound harmless, almost noble. And so, without knowing the full weight of what he agreed to, the serpent yielded. It was not possession in the sense you might imagine. Lucifer's essence slid like shadow into the serpent's body, his spirit wrapping itself around the animal's own like a cloak. The serpent's eyes changed first. Their warm gold cooled into something sharper, edged with a cunning that had never been there before. His voice, once a natural music, gained a strange precision, each word balanced between truth and deceit. I felt the shift at once. The boundary shivered, not broken, but tested. The serpent was still himself, yet not himself. Eden's law had not been shattered, for the vessel was still a creature of the garden. But within him now dwelt one who was not of its peace. I moved to the edge, my gaze fixed on the place where the serpent now swayed. From his posture alone, I could see the change, the unnatural stillness between movements, the deliberate narrowing of the eyes. Lucifer was learning the serpent's body, adjusting to its weight and form, tasting the air with its tongue. There was something else I sensed, a layer of patience that was almost unnatural. Lucifer did not intend to strike at once. He would bide his time, waiting for the right moment, the perfect opening. His plan was not simply to speak words to Eve, but to shape the meeting, to arrange the setting so the words would find her unguarded. You must understand something. Eve was not naive in the way you might think. She was pure, yes, but purity is not weakness. Her mind was sharp, her thoughts deep. She had walked with the Creator, asked questions, learned the patterns of the garden's life. If Lucifer came with blunt lies, she would turn away. He would have to weave truth into his words like threads of gold, so that the falsehood would be hidden until it was too late. I circled the boundary, my spirit alert. There are laws in the realm of spirit that even the fallen cannot break. One of them is this: entry is given, not taken. Lucifer could not drag Eve to the forbidden tree. He could not touch her without permission, but he could invite her thoughts to wander there. The serpent began to move closer to the heart of the garden over the next days, always at a distance, never alarming Adam or Eve. Sometimes he would pass by while Adam was naming the animals, offering a slight nod as if in respect. Other times he would linger in the shadows while Eve walked among the flowering vines, never speaking, only letting her see him and remember his presence. Lucifer was planting familiarity. He knew that when the day came to speak, his voice would not seem strange. There is something humans never knew. Eden itself could sense the thoughts of its keepers. When Adam and Eve were joyful, the garden's colors deepened, its waters sang louder. When their minds were troubled, the air would still and the light would dim. In those days, I began to feel a faint shift in certain corners of the garden. Not darkness yet, but distraction, curiosity, a small wondering about the one tree they had been told to leave untouched. Lucifer had not yet spoken a single tempting word to them, and already the shadow had begun to stretch toward the center. I went before the throne in prayer, for the Most High sees what even we do not. His voice to me was calm, unshaken. Watch. Do not strike unless I command. They must choose. It was a hard command to obey, for every part of me longed to drive the serpent from the garden before his tongue could shape a single lie. But the will of the Creator is perfect, and I obeyed. On the seventh evening after the serpent yielded to Lucifer, I saw it. The moment he positioned himself at the roots of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He wound his body in a slow, deliberate coil around its base, his eyes half-lidded, his head resting as if in peace. From a distance, he was only a creature at rest, but I could feel the coiled intent, the waiting. He was ready, and though Adam was nearby, tending to the herbs that grew along the river, the serpent's gaze was fixed elsewhere. He was waiting for Eve. It was morning in Eden, the kind of morning that even the oldest angels paused to admire. Dew still clung to the leaves like silver dust. The rivers shone like veins of living glass, carrying light through the garden's veins. Every petal seemed to turn toward the sun in worship, and the air held a sweet music only Eden knew how to sing. But beneath it all, I felt it, the faint discord, a thin, almost inaudible thread of unease in the garden's song. It was like a single off note in a perfect melody, almost too small to notice, unless you were trained to listen. I was trained. The serpent was in place. He had chosen his position carefully, coiling at the base of the forbidden tree so that his bronze scales caught the morning light, making him appear almost like a living ornament upon it. His eyes, though still and half-lidded, watched everything. Lucifer was patient. He did not move toward his prey. He let the prey come to him. Adam was in the distance, tending the soil along the banks of the Pishon River. His voice carried faintly as he spoke to the birds that came to rest on his arms. He was unaware of the serpent's new purpose, And Eve was walking. Her steps were unhurried, graceful, the steps of one who feels no danger. Her hair caught the sunlight, and her eyes seemed to carry the color of the sky itself. She was not seeking the tree, not yet. She was gathering herbs and flowers, tracing the curve of the garden's pathways. But I could see it, the subtle turn of her head each time she passed within sight of the tree. Curiosity had been growing in her, not the reckless kind, but the slow, wondering kind that can bloom into something stronger if fed. She had seen the serpent here before, and perhaps in some small part of her heart, she wondered why he favored this place. When she came near enough for him to be heard, the serpent did not speak at once. That is something humans have never truly understood. Temptation is rarely a sudden, loud knock. It is a quiet door left open. He lifted his head slowly, almost as if waking from rest, his eyes warm with a calm that was carefully crafted. "Peace to you, Eve," he said, and though the words were plain, his tone was shaped to sound like respect, almost reverence. She smiled. There was no reason not to. She had spoken with the animals before. Each had its own voice, its own tone. But this one, his words seemed clearer, more deliberate, almost human. They spoke first of simple things, the colors of the flowers she carried, the gentle winds of the morning, the patterns of the clouds above. He asked questions that seemed harmless but were chosen with purpose, drawing her deeper into conversation, making her comfortable in his presence. Then, when the moment was right, he let his gaze drift upward toward the fruit above him. "This tree," he said softly, "it stands apart from all the rest." Eve's eyes followed his, and for the first time, she looked at the fruit not as something forbidden, but as something worth observing. The serpent's voice was almost wistful as he continued. "It is strange, is it not, that such beauty should be untouched?" Eve answered with truth, her tone steady. "We may eat of every tree in the garden, except this one. God has said, 'You shall not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die.'" Lucifer, within the serpent, allowed a small pause, the kind that makes the other wonder if they have been misunderstood. Then came the first true twist of his tone. "Die." His voice carried a gentle disbelief, not mockery, just enough to suggest surprise. "Eve, do you know what death is?" The question was subtle, but it struck something in her. For death was a word she had heard but never seen. In Eden, there was no decay, no fading. The concept was a shadow without shape. She could not describe it, and the serpent knew this. "You will not surely die," he said, the words flowing like water over stone. "For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like him, knowing good and evil." There it was, the hook, not an open defiance of God, but the suggestion of hidden good withheld. It was not framed as rebellion, but as an awakening. Eve's gaze lingered on the fruit now. It did look good, not just in color, but in something deeper, as if the very air around it hummed with promise. Lucifer had subtly directed her senses, not just her thoughts. The fruit's scent seemed sweeter, the way light fell upon it seemed almost divine. I could see the spiritual pressure around her shifting. The garden itself grew still, as if holding its breath. "There is something you must know." At that moment, the Most High could have stopped her hand. He could have sent his voice like thunder to shake the ground, or commanded me to drive the serpent away with a single blow. But no such command came. He allowed the choice to stand. Eve reached upward. Her fingers brushed the skin of the fruit. The serpent's eyes gleamed, not with victory yet, but with anticipation. She hesitated still. For a heartbeat, I thought she might turn away. But Lucifer's last weapon was not in his words, it was in the silence, in letting her own thoughts finish what he had started. When she plucked the fruit, the sound was not loud, but in the spirit, It was like a crack splitting through the fabric of the garden. The serpent did not speak as she brought it to her lips. He only watched. And when she ate, I felt the first tremor of something Eden had never known: separation. Far off, Adam turned at the sound of her voice calling him. She held out the fruit to him with a smile, its juice still glistening on her lips. He hesitated, but his love for her outweighed the command he had been given. He took it. He ate. The moment he swallowed, the garden changed. The light dimmed, the wind hushed, and the rivers seemed to slow. A deep ache pierced through me, for I knew what this meant. The shadow was no longer outside Eden. It was inside. The serpent uncoiled slowly, his work complete. Lucifer had no need to speak further. His victory was in motion now, and its cost would echo through every generation. I turned my face upward, and the voice of the Most High came to me, not in anger, but in a sorrow so deep it made the very ground tremble. It has begun. The moment Adam swallowed the fruit, the garden's song broke. It was not like a sudden shattering, more like the slow fading of a melody you didn't realize was holding your soul together until it was gone. The air felt heavier. The colors of Eden were still beautiful, but no longer carried that living glow that came from the presence of God resting fully on the land. Even the river's reflection seemed dulled, like the surface of a mirror clouded with breath. Adam and Eve stood still, the taste of the fruit fresh on their tongues. Yet it was not the sweetness they felt most, it was the weight. I saw their eyes widen as something unseen closed around their hearts. It was not death in its final form, but the first taste of it, fear. They looked at one another, and for the first time, saw themselves not through the light of innocence, but through the lens of vulnerability. Shame was a word they had never known, yet now it clung to them like a shadow. They reached for leaves, clumsily weaving them together to cover themselves. From my vantage, high above in the spiritual realm, I saw more than human eyes could see. I saw the invisible rift forming. Between them and God now lay a veil, thin yet unbreakable by their own strength. It was like watching a golden bridge crumble stone by stone. I heard the rustle of the serpent slipping deeper into the undergrowth, his work complete. Lucifer's presence lingered in the air like a fading echo, not gloating, not triumphant, only patient. He knew the weight of this single act would cascade into centuries of pain, and for him, that was enough. Then I felt it. The presence of the Most High entered the garden. It is impossible to fully describe what that moment was like. The same God who spoke the stars into being was now walking among trees and streams. His steps were not thunder, yet all creation responded. The leaves turned, the flowers straightened, the river's current quickened as if to greet him. But to Adam and Eve, his nearness now carried not joy, but dread. The sound of his approach made them freeze. They hid among the trees, their breathing shallow. Adam, where are you? The question rolled through Eden like a soft wind, yet it pierced with the weight of eternity. It was not that God did not know where Adam was. The question was an opening, a chance for confession, an invitation to step forward. Adam's voice came, trembling. I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid. The Lord's next words were gentle, but there was a sharpness beneath them. Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? Adam's answer was heavy with hesitation. The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. Eve's eyes filled, but when the Lord turned to her, her voice, though soft, carried the same weight of avoidance. The serpent deceived me, and I ate. The garden held its breath. The witnesses in the heavenly realm, millions of us, looked on in silence. For we knew this was the moment justice and mercy would meet. The Lord turned first to the serpent. His voice deepened, carrying the authority that shook the very soil. Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. I understood the weight of those words immediately. This was the first prophecy of the coming Messiah, the promise that one day, a son of Eve would destroy the works of Lucifer. Even in judgment, God planted hope. Then the Lord turned to Eve. I will greatly increase your pain in childbirth. With pain you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. I could see the sorrow in her eyes, not only for the pain foretold, but for the fact that the perfect unity between man and woman had been fractured. Finally, he faced Adam. Because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. These words landed like the slow fall of a hammer, each one carrying both judgment and the echo of what had been lost. Adam looked down at the soil beneath his feet, the same soil from which he had been formed, and for the first time, understood that one day it would claim him back. Then came a moment that still moves me when I recall it. Though he had just spoken judgment, the Lord himself made garments of animal skin and clothed Adam and Eve. It was the first death in creation, an innocent life given so they could be covered. Even then, the shadow of the cross had begun to stretch through time. I realized something profound in that moment. Justice had been spoken, but grace had already started its work. The sun was beginning to set now, casting long shadows over Eden. I knew what was coming next. The garden could no longer remain their home. Not because God wished to withhold beauty from them, but because in their fallen state, if they reached the tree of life, they would live forever in separation from him. My orders came swiftly. I was to prepare the way for their departure. The garden, once a place of unbroken fellowship, was now a place they could not remain. The weight of it pressed heavy on my spirit. The rivers sang their last song to Adam and Eve. The wind seemed to wrap around them in farewell, and the light above the garden began to dim in a way it never had before. Lucifer was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel his presence at the edges, watching, satisfied, yet already plotting his next move. For though his first strike had landed, the prophecy had also sealed his future defeat. And so the day moved toward its most sorrowful hour, the exile from Eden. The air in Eden was never cold before. But that evening, as the last rays of the sun slipped behind the horizon, a strange coolness entered the garden. It was not the gentle cool of refreshment. It was the quiet stillness before parting, the pause before a door closes. Adam and Eve stood together, still wearing the garments of animal skin the Lord himself had made for them. They did not yet understand the depth of what that meant. That for the first time in creation's history, the life of an innocent had been taken to cover their shame. The blood of that creature was the first shadow of a greater sacrifice to come, one they could not yet imagine. I hovered unseen at the edge of the garden, my orders already sealed in the will of the Most High. This was not a mission I approached with the joy of victory, nor the thrill of battle. My sword, the same one that had clashed against the hosts of Lucifer, now had a different task. It would not strike flesh, it would guard eternity itself. The Lord spoke to the Son and to the Spirit, his voice like a current flowing through the unseen realms. The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. I understood the weight of this. The tree of life was not merely a source of endless days. It was a fountain of unending existence in whatever state the one who ate from it was in. If Adam and Eve were to touch it now, they would be sealed forever in separation from God. Death would no longer be the passage to redemption. It would be the lock on their prison. It was mercy, a hard mercy, that drove what would happen next. The garden seemed to sigh. The river that flowed from its heart carried a softer song, one of farewell. The animals drew back into the shadows, their eyes watching the two who had once ruled them in pure harmony. Even the wind slowed, as if reluctant to move this final moment forward. The Lord stepped before Adam and Eve. His eyes held no hatred, no desire to crush, only the solemn resolve of a father who must send his children away for their own good. Adam's head was bowed. Eve's hands clutched the skin garment close around her, as if it were all she had left of safety. Neither spoke, for what words could there be? I saw the angels who had ministered to them in joy now standing at a distance, their faces set in sorrow. The whole of the heavenly host felt the weight of this exile, not because heaven's order was broken, but because love had to let go. Then the moment came. I descended at the eastern gate of Eden, the place where the first light of every day touched the garden. My armor caught the fading glow of the sun, and my sword was drawn. But this was no ordinary blade. It burned with a fire not born of any earthly flame, a living fire, a consuming light. It was the very holiness of God, given shape. When the Lord commanded, the fire sprang forth from the edge of my weapon, wrapping it in endless motion, turning and twisting as if alive. It was not simply a weapon of defense, it was a declaration. No sin could pass this threshold. The Lord himself led Adam and Eve toward me. Each step they took away from the center of the garden was a step away from the home they had always known. Behind them, I could still see the glow of the tree of life, its leaves shimmering with the light of eternity. The river that flowed from it glistened in the distance, the source of all waters on earth. Adam looked back once, his eyes lingering on that glow, and for a moment I could feel the weight of what he carried, the knowledge that his choice had not only cost him this place, but all who would come after him. Eve looked too, but her gaze was different. It held both sorrow and a strange spark of hope. She did not yet know it, but she was carrying within her the seed of the promise, that one day, from her line, one would come to crush the serpent's head. When they reached the gate, I stepped forward. My flaming sword turned, the fire singing as it moved, casting long shadows on the ground. It was not my choice to block them, it was my calling. The holiness of God is not something that can be bargained with. They paused at the threshold. The Lord spoke to them one final time, words that were not written in your scriptures, but which I will tell you now. This is not the end. The ground you walk will resist you, the days will carry pain, and the night will whisper fear, but my word will not fail. One day, you will see Eden again. One day, the curse will be broken. Then he turned away, and the weight of his presence shifted back toward the heart of heaven. Adam and Eve stepped past me. Their feet touched soil outside the garden, soil that did not sing as Eden's soil did. The air was different here, less alive, heavier with the scent of earth and dust. This was the beginning of the world as you know it now. I remained at the gate, the flaming sword in constant motion. The fire's light never dims, and its turning never stops. Day and night, though time in Eden is not like time outside, I keep watch. No creature, no spirit, no shadow may pass through. Behind me, the tree of life still stands. Its fruit is untouched since that day, its roots drinking from the river that flows from the throne of God. And I know, for I have seen the end as well as the beginning, that one day, when the curse is lifted and the Lamb reigns openly, the gates will be opened again, and the tree will stand in the center of the New Jerusalem, its leaves for the healing of the nations. Revelation 22 verse 2. Until then, I stand here, my sword burning, my eyes fixed on both the beauty that was and the glory that will be. And so, the day the serpent entered Eden ended with the serpent's first victory, but also with his certain defeat written in prophecy. What he thought was the sealing of man's doom was, in truth, the planting of a seed that would one day grow into the very tree from which his destruction would come. I have guarded Eden through centuries of storms, wars, and kingdoms rising and falling. Many have sought it, drawn by whispers of its power, but none have passed me, and none will, until the one who hung the stars speaks the word, "Open the way." When that day comes, the exile will be over,